My name is Ellen West, and I am 79 years old. The scalding water hit my chest before I saw it coming. 1 second I was standing in the kitchen doorway, watching my 12-year-old granddaughter Amber pour a kettle of boiling water into her cup of noodles, and the next, she turned on her heels, her eyes narrowed, and flung the entire thing straight at me. I let out a scream so loud the neighbor's dog started barking. My skin burned instantly. I could feel the blisters forming even as the metal kettle clattered to the ground. The pain was indescribable, but even worse was the shock. I stared at Amber through blurred vision, my nightgown soaked and steaming. And she stood there. No regret, no fear, just a shrug. "Oops," she said, like I'd bumped into her at the store. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching my chest and arm, whimpering, unable to believe what just happened. My son Kevin rushed in, along with his wife Maureen. When they saw me screaming on the floor, red skin blistered and raw, Maureen gasped and ran to Amber. "Oh my God, baby, are you okay?" she asked. Not me, her. "She was in my way," Amber said with a smirk. "They didn't even look at me. I wanted to believe they'd call an ambulance. Or maybe rush to help. But Kevin just knelt down beside me and muttered, "She's just a kid, Mom. Don't make a big deal out of it." That was the moment I knew something inside me had changed. Something deep. They thought I was nothing. An old woman. Live-in maid. Burden. But they didn't know what I still had in me. And they had no idea. I still held the deed to the house. Let me tell you how we got here. And why that burning wasn't the first time they tried to hurt me. Because before that kettle was ever thrown, they'd been pouring hot words, cold shoulders, and silent cruelty for years. The water was just the final blow. It began when Kevin lost his job and asked if his family could stay with me for a few months. Back then, I still believed in family the way I believed in Sunday prayers. Sacred and full of meaning. I was thrilled to help. But little did I know. They didn't plan on ever leaving. I remember the first night they moved in. The house was filled with laughter. Maureen brought in a bouquet of lilies, my favorite, and Amber hugged me tight, calling me Granny Bear. I smiled so hard I thought my cheeks would crack. My heart swelled with joy. But joy has a funny way of shrinking when people start showing their true faces. 2 weeks in, Maureen began reordering my pantry without asking. Kevin moved his gaming setup into my dining room. Amber started skipping school and playing on her tablet for 12 hours straight. I asked gently, "Shouldn't she be studying?" Maureen rolled her eyes. "We're giving her space, Ellen. Don't be old-fashioned." Curious what happened next. Amber started calling me the old bat behind my back. Except, it wasn't always behind my back. Sometimes it was just loud enough for me to hear from the hallway. Told Kevin. He laughed. "She's going through a phase," he said. But the phase grew darker. She threw my cane once because I asked her to lower the TV. She took photos of me sleeping and posted them online with captions like, "This which never dies." And still, they told me it was just teenage stuff. I began to feel invisible in my own home. My bedroom was the only place that still felt like mine, until the night Maureen knocked without waiting for an answer and said, "Kevin and I were thinking of converting this into Amber's study room. You can sleep in the den." The den. The storage room with no windows. They said it was temporary, just for a while. But it wasn't. That's where I started sleeping. On a pull-out cot, surrounded by boxes of their old junk. Every morning I woke with back pain and the smell of mothballs in my nose. And yet I said nothing. Why? Because I still believed love would win. That if I just held on longer, they'd remember who I was. The woman who raised Kevin alone when his father died. The woman who paid his college tuition. Who watched Amber when she was just a colicky baby so they could go on date nights. But love doesn't win when people forget your worth. Amber didn't forget. She just never learned. One day, I returned home from the grocery store and found all my framed photos, wedding pictures, my graduation, baby Kevin, tossed into a cardboard box labeled "Old Stuff." The walls now had selfies of Amber in expensive wigs and glittery outfits. When I asked Maureen where my things were, she said, "They were making the space feel sad." I started cooking less, talking less, being less. But the final straw before the kettle came 3 nights before. I had a mild stroke. A mini one, the doctor said. Told Kevin. He looked annoyed. So what do you want us to do, Mom? You're old. Things happen. Maureen chimed in. Let's not make this about you. Amber has a dance competition coming up. That's when I started quietly gathering my documents. The deed, the emergency contacts, the bank statements. Because while they saw me as a ghost in my own home, I still legally owned every wall and tile beneath their ungrateful feet. I still held power. They just didn't know it yet. Then came the morning Amber threw the hot water on me. That wasn't a mistake. It was a message. And mine would be louder. I just needed to heal. And move in silence. Because the house they laughed in, the house they ruled like a kingdom, was still under one name, Ellen West. And I was about to show them just how loud an old woman could get when she's burned for the last time. If this story shook something inside you, if you've ever felt ignored, erased, or treated like you don't matter just because of your age, then keep listening. Because Ellen's story isn't just revenge. It's a reminder. Never underestimate a quiet woman with a paper trail. Backhand index pointing right like this video so others can hear her voice. Speech balloon comment if you've ever been made to feel invisible in your own family. Bell subscribe for more real stories that show what strength really looks like. The burns on my chest and shoulder took weeks to begin healing. The skin bubbled and peeled in places I never thought I'd feel pain. But I didn't cry, not in front of them. I winced quietly. Took care of my wounds in the bathroom, using what little first aid kit I had tucked away under the sink. Kevin didn't even bother asking if I needed to see a doctor. Maureen muttered something about not wanting to attract attention, as if my pain were a stain on their reputation. But deep inside, something stronger than the pain began to grow, resolve. I lay awake in the storage room, the dim light bulb above flickering like a dying star, and stared at the ceiling. A silent promise built up inside me. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to ask for space at the table I paid for. I had something they didn't realize had value. Ownership. But I had to play it smart. Amber, meanwhile, walked around the house like a queen. She didn't get punished. She didn't apologize. In fact, she laughed loudly with her friends over video chat, replaying the moment she accidentally spilled water on me. The retelling was cruel. She called me the crypt keeper. I heard them all giggle. Maureen never corrected her. Kevin never even looked me in the eyes anymore. I began pretending to sleep more. Pretending to be confused sometimes. Let them believe I was slipping. But while they laughed, I read. I studied. I called a lawyer from a friend's phone at church. I got the documents in order. Quietly. Carefully. Meanwhile, Maureen was planning a remodel. She walked around with a Pinterest board on her phone, pointing at where she'd install a new granite island. Right here, she said, standing in the middle of my kitchen. Once Mom moves into a home, we'll have so much more space. Home. I'd never agreed to that. But they'd started researching retirement facilities behind my back. Kevin had printed brochures. They planned to put me away. That's when I knew. I couldn't just leave. I had to take everything back. So I made my move in steps. The first was to change the locks on the mailbox and get a P.O. box. I didn't want them seeing the letters from my lawyer. When Kevin asked if I needed help checking the mail, I smiled sweetly. Oh no, dear. I just enjoy the fresh air. Fresh air and freedom. Then I quietly updated the house insurance to list my cousin Harriet as emergency contact instead of Kevin. The second step was more subtle. I accidentally left the deed folder open on the coffee table one night while Amber was scrolling TikTok. She glanced at it, uninterested, but Maureen saw it as she walked past. She frowned. What's this? Oh, I said softly. Just some old paperwork. I was updating my will. Her face froze. You're changing your will. He nodded. Just reviewing some things. You know how it is. My age, anything could happen. Like accidents with hot water. I smiled slowly, and for the first time, Maureen looked worried. That night, I heard them arguing behind closed doors. I didn't catch every word, but I knew panic when I heard it. They'd assumed I had nothing left to give or take. But they'd forgotten who built this home. Every brick in this place was paid with sweat, years of double shifts, and love. It wasn't long before they started acting nicer. Kevin brought me breakfast in bed one morning. Amber offered to carry my groceries from the car. Maureen even massaged my shoulders once and called me Mom. Played along. But I didn't forget. The third step came when I asked them all to sit in the living room one Sunday afternoon. I told them I'd made a big decision about the house. Their eyes lit up. Maureen sat forward, crossing her legs like a lawyer ready to sign the deal. Amber chewed gum in the corner. Kevin cleared his throat. I've decided, I said, folding my hands neatly in my lap, that it's time to hand over responsibility. I've had a good run. This house needs younger hands. Maureen clapped her hands together. Finally. I mean, that's so wise of you, Ellen. Kevin added. We'll take care of everything. We're ready. He nodded. Good. Then you'll understand why I called my lawyer to be here. Maureen's smile vanished. What? Just then, Harriet knocked. She walked in with a folder and a firm smile. Maureen didn't know her. Kevin barely remembered her. But I did. She was the cousin who always said, "Don't let them take what you built." Harriet opened the folder. I turned to my family. I'm not handing the house over to you. I'm donating it to the church's shelter program. And I'm moving to a senior co-op apartment downtown. Somewhere peaceful. Somewhere I choose. Maureen gasped. Amber dropped her gum. Kevin stood up, stammering. You can't do that. I stood too. Tall and straighter than I had in months. I can. And I did. You see, this house was mine. And now, it's someone else's. Someone who won't throw boiling water on the person who gave them a home. Kevin's hands curled into fists. You'd rather give it to strangers than your own family? No, I said quietly. I gave you everything. You just didn't treat it like family. The room fell silent. Amber ran upstairs. Maureen stormed out onto the porch. Kevin just sat there, breathing hard, shaking his head like I'd betrayed him. But I felt no guilt, only peace. Later that evening I started packing. My new place was small, but it was clean, quiet, and mine. I would furnish it with memories that didn't scream. I left the family a week to move out. But what they did next almost shattered that peace. Because just when I thought they'd finally given up, Amber came back. And this time, she wasn't holding a kettle. She was holding something far worse. If this chapter made your blood boil or brought you peace, if you've ever stood up for yourself after years of silence, then don't stop now. Beach Balloon, share your thoughts below. What would you have done in Ellen's shoes? Red heart like this if you believe in second chances, but not at the cost of dignity. Bell, subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Stay tuned. Because in the next chapter, Ellen faces a betrayal she never saw coming. Amber stood at the front gate of the house I was about to leave behind. Her fists clenched, and her eyes cold in a way no 12-year-old's eyes should ever be. In her hand was a smartphone. But not just any phone, my phone. The one I'd misplaced 2 days before and assumed I left at the church. You dropped this, she said with a smirk. Too bad I figured out the passcode. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about, Amber? Asked cautiously. She tapped the screen a few times and held it up toward me. I went through your texts. I saw your lawyer's messages. I saw the deed transfer. And I recorded everything you said at dinner the other night. I didn't remember saying anything incriminating. But children, especially cruel ones, know how to twist words. And if you think giving this house away is going to be that easy, she added. I already posted a video online about how my evil grandma is throwing us out onto the street. Wanna see the comments? She pulled up TikTok. There it was. A video of her with fake tears, her voice shaking as she said, My grandma is giving our house to strangers. We're just kids. Please, someone help. It had over 600,000 views. Hundreds of comments calling me heartless. People saying they'd never let their mom do that to their grandkids. Offers to start a GoFundMe. And worst of all, threats. She's too old to make those decisions. Where's CPS? Somebody help this poor family. Felt faint. Amber was turning public opinion against me, and she was doing it with the very thing that protected me all my life. My name. Before I could speak, Maureen came rushing out the front door. "You're not leaving," she said coldly. "We talked to someone. If we can prove you're mentally unfit, the deed transfer might be invalid." My breath caught. Kevin stepped out behind her, holding a clipboard. "Power of attorney," he said flatly. "We're filing for it. You've been erratic, confused. You can barely walk straight some days." My knees buckled slightly, but I stood my ground. "You want to declare me incompetent so you can keep the house?" Maureen didn't answer. But Amber did. "You burned yourself," she said, her mouth curling into that same smirk she wore the day she hurt me. "And now you want to blame me." That was it. That was the moment I knew they wouldn't just let me leave in peace. They weren't done using me. Not until I had nothing left. So I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and made 2 calls. First to Harriet. Second to Pastor Don, who oversaw the women's shelter I planned to donate the house to. Within 24 hours, both arrived at my home with the local sheriff, who I'd contacted earlier with medical records, the lawyer's letter, and proof of ownership. But before they could even knock, Kevin called his bluff. He'd filed the mental wellness petition, and I was to appear in front of a judge. They were dragging me into court. Me, a woman who raised her child alone, fed 4 mouths on a widow's pension, and still volunteered at soup kitchens every Thursday, being accused of not knowing what I was doing. Harriet hugged me close. "They want war," she said. "We'll give them facts." I looked down at my blistered hands, my trembling knees. I had little strength left, but I had one thing they couldn't fake: truth. In court, I stood before the judge and told my story. I handed over photographs of the burns. I read text messages from Kevin where he told me I was in the way. I showed bank statements proving I'd paid every bill while they spent on hair extensions and gaming chairs. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I played Amber's TikTok video aloud in the courtroom. The judge watched in silence. And at the end, he looked at Amber, sitting in the gallery with her arms crossed and chewing gum. He narrowed his eyes. "That," he said, "was performance art. Cruel and manipulative." Kevin stood up and tried to object. The judge raised a hand. "Enough. This woman may be elderly, but she is not incompetent. In fact, I believe she is the only person in this family acting like an adult." Tears welled in my eyes. Harriet squeezed my hand. Kevin turned red with rage. Maureen's face crumbled. Amber rolled her eyes, clearly not grasping the gravity of it all. The judge banged his gavel. "The deed stands. She is within her rights. You all have 7 days to vacate the property, or you will be forcibly removed." That should have been the end. But the next morning when I returned home, I found the living room destroyed. The couches were slashed. The curtains burned at the edges. My photo frames smashed. And on the wall in red spray paint was one word: witch. I stood there frozen. Amber had gone too far. But I didn't call the police this time. Called a locksmith. Then I called a moving truck. I wasn't going to live in that house anymore. I didn't need to. Because justice isn't always staying to prove a point. Sometimes justice is leaving and watching them burn in the mess they created, without you there to clean it up. But just when I thought I had escaped, Amber appeared one last time. My new apartment building. My door. And this time she had someone with her. Social worker. And a surprising accusation that could threaten everything I'd rebuilt. Speech balloon: have you ever been underestimated or treated like you couldn't stand up for yourself? Red heart, tap like if you believe age doesn't mean weakness. Bell, subscribe now, because Ellen's battle is only just beginning, and in the next chapter, a deeper betrayal unfolds. Stay with us. You won't believe what comes next. I opened the door to my new apartment with trembling hands. There stood Amber in a clean white dress, her curls pulled into neat braids, a little Bible in her hand, and a faked look of innocence on her face. Beside her, a tall woman in a brown suit and glasses held a clipboard. "Mrs. Ellen West?" the woman asked. I nodded slowly, my eyes never leaving Amber. "I'm Ms. Howard from Child Protective Services. We've received a report that you may have been physically abusive to your granddaughter, Amber." I nearly dropped the glass I was holding. "I'm sorry, what?" Amber glanced up at me with wide, shimmering eyes. "She burned me once with her curling iron," she whispered. "I tried to hide it. I didn't want her to get in trouble." The woman held up a hand. "I'm not here to accuse, only to ask a few questions. Would you mind if we step inside?" I stepped back on instinct, but every fiber in me screamed no. "She's lying," I said sharply. "She threw boiling water on me. I have hospital records. I have photos." Amber began crying. She said if I told anyone, she'd put me in the street. That's when I realized. This wasn't just a tantrum. Amber had been coached, and Maureen was behind it. Kevin, too, probably. They couldn't take the house. They couldn't discredit me in court. So now they were trying to destroy my freedom. I let them in. Sat down on the edge of my couch. Ms. Howard opened a folder and began asking me questions, writing down every word I said, her eyes darting between me and Amber. "Did you ever leave Amber unsupervised? She lived in my house. Did you ever use physical punishment? She threw a boiling kettle at me." Amber pulled up her sleeve. A small red mark was visible on her upper arm. "She burned me because I called her boring," she sniffled. "She's always hated me." I stared in disbelief. "That's a curling burn," I snapped. "She did that to herself. I saw the iron in her hand." "She threw my puppy out once too," Amber added quietly. "Because it peed on her carpet." I stood up. My voice rose. "I have never hurt that child. Not once. Fed her. Clothed her. I was there when her mother couldn't even be bothered to make her dinner." Ms. Howard raised a hand. "Ma'am, please. This is just a preliminary inquiry." "But my life is being accused," cried. "Do you have any idea what they've done to me?" She nodded slowly and closed her folder. "We will need to follow up. And until then, we're going to place Amber in a temporary stay with her parents while we sort out the facts." I wanted to laugh. "She already lives with them." Ms. Howard stood. "Just to confirm, you're no longer in contact with the child?" "By choice," I muttered. "I'm trying to heal." Amber smiled slightly behind her crocodile tears. As they walked out, I slumped into my chair, hollow. Violated. My own granddaughter had tried to flip the story. My own blood. I called Harriet. "They're trying to ruin me," I said, shaking. She was quiet. Then her voice hardened. "Then it's time to hit back harder." "But how?" "Ellen," she said, "how long have you kept that notebook?" Pause. The notebook. The one where I wrote everything down. Every insult. Every moment. Every conversation, word for word. The hidden camera footage from the day they first screamed at me to get out of my own kitchen. The emails where Maureen begged me to let Kevin move in and swore, "We'll never take advantage of you." I had the truth. But truth only works if people see it. So I reached out to someone I never thought I'd need. My niece, Carrie, a journalist. She used to write for the city paper. Had since moved into online media, storytelling, advocacy, digital exposés. When she heard what happened, she asked one question. "Do you want me to make this loud?" I hesitated, because it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about showing every elder woman who's been gaslighted, used, and thrown aside, that we still have power. So I said yes. Carrie interviewed me over 3 days. She scanned my medical records, recorded my voice, and then we hit upload. The story was titled, "They Said She Burned Her Granddaughter. The Truth Broke the Internet." We posted my hospital photos. The scanned texts from Kevin, mocking me for asking for ice after my burn. The footage, grainy but clear, of Amber calling me names and stomping on my Bible in the hallway. And the TikTok video Amber posted. We played it side by side with the truth. The internet exploded. Overnight, thousands of people shared their own stories of being abused by family, ignored as elders, treated like ghosts in their own homes. Amber's TikTok account was taken down. Maureen posted a frantic video claiming I edited the footage. Kevin deleted his Facebook. But the real twist came 2 days later, when CPS called me back. Ms. Howard sounded different this time. Apologetic. Mrs. West, I've reviewed new evidence, she said. It appears this report was part of a retaliation attempt. Amber has been removed from her parents' home temporarily. You've been cleared. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just breathed. 'Cause I was finally free. But what I didn't know, Kevin and Maureen weren't done. The house may have been gone. But now they wanted to come for the last thing I had left. My pension. Fire if this chapter hit you hard. Speech balloon, tell us. What would you do if your own family tried to twist the truth against you? Red heart like if you believe elders deserve respect, not revenge. Bell, subscribe now, because next chapter is the turning point, and Ellen is about to outsmart them at their own game. Don't miss what comes next. You'll want to take notes. The moment I heard the words, they want access to your pension, something deep inside me shifted again. I was sitting at the tiny round table in my new apartment, a cup of chamomile tea in my hand, when Harriet broke the news. They filed a petition to gain financial control, she said, laying a stack of printed documents in front of me. Kevin claims you're unable to manage your affairs. Says your recent, emotional instability makes you a risk to yourself and your finances. Blink. But they lost the house. What more do they want? Harriet tapped the papers. Money. Control. They want your monthly pension. And if they can get a doctor to write even a mildly ambiguous letter, they might convince a judge to put your accounts under guardianship. Meaning, Kevin could manage everything. Your spending, your savings, your life. I leaned back in the chair. It wasn't about me being a mother anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about control, ownership, entitlement. These weren't my family. Not anymore. They were predators wearing familiar faces. Harriet handed me a small voice recorder. We have to get ahead of them. If they're going to lie, we need to prove they've been plotting this from the start. That night, I opened my old trunk from the bedroom closet. Inside was everything I had kept since Kevin was a boy. His school drawings. Letters from his father before he passed. Notes he wrote me when he was grounded. And I cried. Because how do you protect yourself from the very child you once rocked to sleep? How do you fight someone who knows your heart and chooses to break it anyway? But I wasn't going to let heartbreak stop me. Not again. The next day I called Kevin. Meet me, I said. Just you. Let's talk. He agreed. We met at the park where he used to play as a kid. I brought a blanket, a basket of sandwiches. He brought fake charm. Glad you're finally ready to move on, he said with a grin. I think we've all been a little high-strung lately. Kept my voice soft. I want to find peace. But I also need to ask. Why the pension? He didn't blink. You've always said family should help each other. We're struggling, Mom. You wouldn't even notice a few hundred missing every month. I swallowed. And what if I said no? His smile faltered. Then I might have to revisit that mental fitness claim. Click. That's when I pressed the hidden button in my purse. The voice recorder ticked on. He kept talking. He admitted everything. That Maureen had pushed for it. That Amber was playing her part. That if I didn't give them access to the funds, they'd go public with more lies. But you don't want that, he said, finishing his soda. I mean, you already look crazy enough on the internet. When I got home I cried. Not from fear, but because I realized there was no Kevin left in the man I just spoke to. Just cold strategy. But I wasn't broken. Called Carrie. Sent her the recording. She added it to the story. Part 2 went live that evening. She gave them everything. Then they came for her pension. The new recording played. Line by line. Word for word. Kevin's voice spread across the internet like wildfire. Outrage flooded in. Local news picked it up. Then national outlets. I became the grandma they couldn't silence. Thousands rallied behind me. Donations came in which I declined. Instead, I asked them to send letters to the court, to CPS, to the state board that governed elderly rights. And they did. Within days, Kevin's petition was dismissed. Maureen's social media pages were flooded with people demanding apologies. Amber's school opened an investigation into her behavior and online bullying. And me. I stood at my apartment window, watching the sun rise, finally feeling like I could breathe. But peace didn't last long. 3 days later, I found a note taped to my front door. The handwriting was scratchy, uneven. It said, "You may have one, but we're not finished." There was no signature, but I knew who it was from. And I knew deep down that they had one last card to play. One last strike before they'd finally fall. And it wouldn't be through courts or social workers. This time it would come face to face. Broken heart if you've ever had to protect yourself from the very ones you love. Beach balloon, share your truth. You're not alone. Red heart, tap like to show support for Ellen's courage. Bell, subscribe now, because in the next chapter, the fight moves from paperwork to something far more dangerous. Stay with us. What comes next will shock you. I held the note in my trembling hands for nearly 10 minutes. Staring at the uneven letters like they might rearrange into something less threatening. But they didn't. You may have one. But we're not finished. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. I locked the door, pulled the blinds down, and sat at the table with my hands folded tightly. My heartbeat pounded in my ears like war drums. Kevin had tried the courts, the lies, the public smear. Amber had used social media to make me a villain. Maureen weaponized sympathy. Now they were moving into darker territory. I called Harriet, told her about the note. She arrived within the hour with a stun gun in her purse and fire in her eyes. "I knew they wouldn't let go that easy," she said. "They've lost too much now. It's not about the house anymore. It's ego." "Ego?" I asked quietly. Harriet nodded. "You exposed them. You embarrassed them. Men like Kevin don't handle shame well. Women like Maureen don't forget being defeated by someone they called weak." She wasn't wrong. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floor, every rattle of the wind outside, made me sit up. I kept my bedroom light on and a metal cane beside my bed. Not because I needed it, but because I needed something. And then, around 2 a.m. I heard it. The balcony door sliding open. I lived on the 2nd floor. That door was locked. Or it had been. I crept toward the hallway, heart pounding in my chest. I clutched my phone in one hand and the cane in the other. A figure stepped into the living room. Broad shoulders. "Kevin." He turned toward me, startled by the dim hallway light. "Jesus, Mom," he hissed. "You scared me." "I should be the one saying that," I said slowly. "What are you doing here?" "I just wanted to talk. Without Harriet. Without your lawyer. Without your fan club. At 2 in the morning. Through my balcony." He smiled sheepishly. "You weren't answering my calls." I looked behind him. The sliding door had been pried open with a crowbar. "I should call the police." His smile vanished. "You do that," he said flatly, "and I'll go straight to the news. Say this whole thing was orchestrated. That you bribe people. That you forge documents. That you're delusional and obsessed with attention." I stepped back. He followed. "I didn't want to do this," he said. "But you're forcing my hand. I'm broke, Mom. We have nothing. You humiliated us. My daughter has to eat." I stared at him. "She threw boiling water on me. And you threw our lives into the gutter." There it was. Not regret. Not pain. Just blame. Kevin reached into his coat pocket. For 1 second I thought he was pulling a weapon. Froze. But it was worse. He held up a paper. "Sign this," he said. "It's a power of attorney document. Just for your accounts. Temporary. I'll walk away after that. No more court. No more videos. Just help your son." I laughed. Quietly. Bitterly. "You break into my home and ask me for money?" He clenched his jaw. "I'm giving you a chance." That's when I pressed the emergency call button on my phone. Silent, no ring, but it sent a ping to Harriet and local authorities. He didn't see it. I looked him straight in the eyes. "Get out." He stepped forward. "Or what?" Just then, bang bang bang, came the sound of the front door. "Police. Open up." Kevin's face turned pale. I walked toward the door slowly, unafraid now, and opened it. 2 officers stepped in. Harriet behind them, breathing hard, phone still in hand. Kevin was frozen mid-step, papers still in hand. The officers saw the crowbar, the broken latch. Within minutes they had him cuffed. I didn't look away. I didn't cry. I watched my son get taken away like a stranger. 'Cause he was a stranger now. As they read him his rights, he shouted over his shoulder, "This isn't over." But it was. For him. Not for me. Because the next day I received something that stopped my breath again. A certified letter. From Maureen. Not a threat. Not a plea. But a lawsuit. She was suing me for emotional damages, on behalf of Amber. And the amount. $500,000. I thought I'd seen the worst of them. But I hadn't. They were trying to bankrupt me now. And they were using my granddaughter to do it. Speech balloon if your heart broke for Ellen in this chapter. Drop a comment below. Red heart, tap like if you believe every woman has the right to protect herself, no matter her age. Bell subscribe now because in the next chapter, we walk into the courtroom where everything will change. You won't believe who shows up to testify. I sat frozen at the kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hand. $500,000. That was the amount Maureen was suing me for. On behalf of Amber. The claim. Intentional emotional distress caused by manipulation, abandonment, and public humiliation of a minor. I read the words over and over again, as if they'd suddenly change. But they didn't. She was using Amber. Again. But this time to try and destroy me financially. They had failed to steal my house. Failed to control my pension. Failed to brand me as unfit. Now they were going after my peace of mind, dragging me into yet another court battle, trying to make me look like a villain in the eyes of strangers. Again. I looked at the walls of my tiny apartment. There was no marble countertop here, no chandelier, no expensive leather chairs. Just me, my tea set, a floral couch, and the silence that had become my only comfort. Then I looked at the framed photo on my nightstand. It was of Kevin, age 5. Toothless grin. Arms around my neck. I gently turned it face down. That little boy no longer existed. I called my lawyer, Mr. Harris, immediately. He reviewed the letter and sighed. "This is a desperation move," he said. "They're hoping the pressure will make you settle out of fear. But you don't have to pay a dime unless the court believes their lies." "But the judge might see a sobbing child and believe it," I whispered. He paused. "Then we don't just defend you. We expose everything. We gathered every bit of evidence. Amber's TikTok videos where she laughed about scolding me. The screenshots of her friends commenting with fire emojis and laughing faces. The voice recordings of Kevin admitting to manipulation. The footage of Amber mocking me when she thought I was asleep. And more importantly, my medical records. Hospital notes that clearly stated second-degree burns from a hot liquid incident. The story was already out there. The public had seen the truth. But now it was time for a judge and jury to see it too. Court was set for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, Maureen launched a campaign online. She painted herself as the victim, calling me unstable, claiming I abandoned a little girl with trauma. I didn't respond. I saved every post, every comment, every false claim. The courtroom was small, gray, and cold the day we walked in. I wore a plain navy dress and flats. No makeup, no jewelry, just my cane and my dignity. Amber sat on the opposite bench with her mother, hair tied in a perfect bow, her expression blank. But I noticed something different in her eyes this time. Guilt. Fear. Kevin wasn't there. He was still facing charges for the attempted break-in. When the trial began, Maureen's attorney stood and painted a picture so distorted, so absurd, that I nearly forgot we were talking about my life. She left a child emotionally shattered. She encouraged online harassment. She endangered Amber's mental well-being by provoking public ridicule. I kept my hands folded. When it was our turn, Mr. Harris stood. He said nothing for 5 long seconds. Then he turned to the jury and played the audio of Amber's TikTok story. Her mocking laughter after describing how she got granny good with that kettle. Gasps echoed in the room. He then played Kevin's voice, calmly admitting to lying, threatening legal action for money, and manipulating the situation. Maureen's face turned ghost white. And then Mr. Harris said, "We would like to call a surprise witness." I turned in my seat. In walked Mrs. Grayson, Amber's school counselor. She testified under oath that Amber had once bragged about how she could make anyone believe anything. That she had openly admitted she made her granny cry for fun. That Maureen encouraged this behavior, saying it built character. Then came the final blow. Mr. Harris handed the judge a manila envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten by Amber, dated almost 2 years ago. A school assignment titled, "The Meanest Thing I Ever Did." In it, she detailed how she once poured hot tea near her grandmother's feet, just to see her jump. How she would hide my keys, pretend I forgot conversations, and how she would tell little lies just to see what I could get away with. Amber turned red. Maureen lunged for the letter, screaming, "You weren't supposed to bring that." The judge banged the gavel. Order was called. The jury looked stunned. By the time closing arguments ended, the entire court had seen who the real victim was. And it wasn't Amber. 2 hours later, the verdict was in. Case dismissed. No damages awarded. I closed my eyes and whispered a quiet thank you to God. But it wasn't over. As I walked out of the courtroom, Harriet by my side, a reporter shoved a mic in front of me. "Mrs. West, how does it feel to have defeated your own family?" I looked at her calm. "I didn't defeat them," I said. "They did that to themselves. I just survived it." The next morning I made one final move. I wrote a letter. Not to Kevin. Not to Maureen. But to Amber. It read, "One day when you're older, you'll look back on what you did and who encouraged you to do it. Pray you find peace. Pray you heal. And I hope you learn that power isn't in manipulation. It's in kindness. That's the lesson your mother never learned. But maybe you still can." I didn't mail it. I burned it. Because some words are better let go than carried. But just when I thought the chapter had closed, I received a message from someone I hadn't heard from in decades. Amber's biological grandmother. Maureen's estranged mother. And what she told me would change everything I thought I knew about why Maureen hated me so much. Speech balloon: have you ever been dragged into lies by your own family? Tell us in the comments. Red heart, like this chapter if you believe truth always finds its way. Bell subscribe now, because in the next chapter, secrets from the past come to light, and Ellen discovers Maureen's real reason for revenge. The story isn't over yet. Buckle up. The message came early in the morning, just as I was brewing my tea. Unknown number. Unknown name. But the words on the screen stopped my heart cold. "You don't know me, but I'm Maureen's mother. I think it's time you heard the truth." I stared at the message for several minutes, unsure if I should reply. Harriet, who was spending the week with me after the lawsuit, read it over my shoulder. "Don't answer," she warned. "What if it's another setup?" But something told me this was different. This wasn't Kevin or Maureen playing another game. This felt old. Heavy with something that had waited years to be spoken. So I responded. And later that afternoon, a woman with short silver hair and tired blue eyes knocked on my door. Her name was Margaret. She was Maureen's birth mother. We sat at the table, two grandmothers on opposite sides of the wreckage our children had built. She held a faded leather handbag in her lap and wouldn't touch her tea. "I've watched from afar," she said slowly. "I didn't want to interfere. But when I saw your story, and how they dragged you through the mud, I knew I had to come." I nodded slowly, still unsure what she meant to reveal. She took a deep breath. "Maureen wasn't always like this. She was a sweet girl once, quiet, loving, until she met my second husband." Her voice cracked. "He was cruel to us both. But he was especially cruel to Maureen. Controlled everything, belittled her, told her she was ugly, stupid, that no man would ever want her." Froze. Margaret gripped her mug tightly. By the time she turned 17, she started changing, became cold, manipulative, learned how to lie just to survive. And when I finally left him, it was too late. Maureen was already broken in places I couldn't reach. I swallowed hard. "She told me once," Margaret whispered, "that the worst day of her life was seeing a woman like you, so strong, so respected, raise a son who still loved her. She never had that. She resented it, envied it." She looked up at me, eyes full of regret. "She didn't come after you because of the house, or even the money. She came after you because she hated that you had the kind of motherhood she never got." I sat in silence, stunned. All the lies, all the attacks, the poison she poured into Amber. And underneath it all was pain. Not an excuse, but an explanation. She married Kevin because he was desperate, malleable. He gave her a family without resistance. And when she saw how much he loved you, it triggered everything she never healed from. Margaret pulled a folded envelope from her bag and slid it toward me. "I wrote this for her years ago. She never read it. Maybe one day you'll get the chance to give it to her." I opened the envelope and skimmed the handwritten note. It was an apology, plea. A mother asking her daughter for forgiveness, for not protecting her sooner. I blinked back tears. But Margaret wasn't finished. "I have custody of Amber now," she said. "Child Services didn't think Maureen was fit. Kevin's still facing charges. And Amber, she's lashing out, yes, but she's not beyond saving." My heart squeezed. "Would you ever be willing to speak to her? When you're ready." I looked down at my bandaged arm, the healed burns that would always leave a scar. I thought of the laughter, the boiling kettle, the lies. Then I looked at Margaret. "She needs to know what she did," I said quietly. "But if there's still a girl inside her worth saving, I want her to find her." Margaret nodded, tears in her eyes. "She might listen to you, Ellen. One day." That night, I sat by my window, watching the wind sweep through the trees. I thought about forgiveness, about how it doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means releasing the weight so it doesn't crush you anymore. 2 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Amber. The handwriting was messy, uneven, but real. "Dear Grandma Ellen, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. I was mean. I was cruel. And I lied. Blah. Mom told me things that made me hate you. But I see now, she was hurting and she made me hurt you too. Sorry. I don't expect you to write back. But I'm learning. Margaret is teaching me to bake. And I read one of your stories online. You're strong. I want to be strong too. Love. Amber." I closed the letter, held it against my chest, and cried. Not because everything was perfect now, but because something was beginning. Weeks turned into months. The threats stopped. The lawsuits vanished. Kevin disappeared into silence. Maureen relocated to another state. The news cycle moved on. But I stayed. In my little apartment, surrounded by plants and books and silence. And one afternoon I received a knock. Opened the door. Amber stood there, holding a pie. "I made this," she said softly. "I don't know if it's any good." I stepped aside. "Let's find out." And as we sat at the table, sharing awkward bites and glances, I realized this wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. not to the past, but to a future where healing was still possible. For me, for her, and maybe one day for them all. Blossom if this story touched your heart. Beach balloon share what it made you feel. Red heart like if you believe forgiveness is the most powerful revenge. Bell subscribe to hear more stories like this, where quiet strength speaks louder than cruelty. Your voice matters. So does your healing. Thank you for staying with Ellen until the very end. I never imagined I'd be sitting across from Amber again, let alone watching her slice pie with trembling hands in my quiet little kitchen. She wore a navy sweater too big for her shoulders, sleeves pulled over her palms. Her eyes, once hard with pride and defiance, now carried something else. Shame. And uncertainty. We didn't say much that first afternoon. The pie was overbaked on one side and raw in the center. I took a bite anyway. It's ambitious, I said with a smile. She laughed. Just a little. And it wasn't cruel this time. Margaret helped. I still can't figure out how long to leave it in. Silence passed between us. Heavy but not angry. I asked her how school was. She shrugged. Hard. People at school saw the video. Some say I'm a monster. Some say I'm a liar. She looked up at me. I don't even know which one's worse. I reached across the table and placed my hand gently over hers. You're a child, I said. A child who was taught the wrong things. You didn't know better. But now, you get to learn better. Her lips trembled. I don't want to be like her. He nodded. Then don't be. That moment marked the beginning of something unexpected. Every Saturday afternoon, Amber came over. Sometimes she brought cookies she'd baked with Margaret. Sometimes she brought books she was reading. Other times she just came to sit, quietly, soaking in the peace my home gave her. I didn't ask about Maureen. I didn't mention Kevin. She didn't either. It was like we'd agreed silently that some wounds heal better without salt. But of course, peace never lasts forever. Not when there are still old debts and buried bones. One late evening in early spring, I received a letter from the state. It was about my retirement benefits. Apparently, someone had accessed my Social Security account and attempted to redirect my monthly checks to a new designated caregiver. The name listed. Kevin West. I stared at the paper, heart pounding. After everything. After court. Rest. Humiliation. Silence. He was still trying to take from me. The letter explained that the request had been flagged due to irregularities and was being investigated, but it shook me to my core. Amber noticed something was wrong the moment she arrived that weekend. I handed her the letter. She read it quietly, then pushed the paper away. I can't believe him. I can, I said. But this time, I wasn't going to sit and wait for disaster. Took action. With the help of Harriet and Mr. Harris, I filed a permanent financial protection order against Kevin. I also met with a banking officer to place all my accounts under biometric verification. No more tricks. No more passwords Kevin could guess. No more signatures he could forge. I even gave Harriet co-authorization in case of emergencies. But more than that, I wrote a new will. This one was simple. No room for disputes. And in it I left something behind. Not just money, not just instructions, but a message. One for Kevin. One for Maureen. And one for Amber. Weeks passed. Then one day I received another knock. But this time it wasn't Amber. It was Kevin. Standing on my porch like a stranger. Thinner. Hello. Tired. He held his hands up. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to steal. I don't know where else to go. I stood firm in the doorway. I'm not your home anymore, Kevin. He nodded. I know. And I deserve that. I didn't invite him in. I didn't ask about his situation. But before he turned to leave, I said, Amber's learning how to be kind. Maybe you should too. He nodded once more. And then he walked away. I don't know where he went. I didn't ask. But for the first time, felt closure. A kind of soft ending. Not dramatic, not loud, but necessary. Amber kept coming. She started calling me Grandma Ellen again. And one day, while helping me hang clothes on the line, she asked, "Do you think I'll ever earn forgiveness from God?" I looked at her. "You already did, honey. The moment you chose truth over fear." That night, I finished writing the final pages of a journal I had kept since the beginning of it all. The day I opened my door to Kevin and Maureen, thinking they were coming home. I titled the last page, "Sometimes the family we raise becomes the storm. But sometimes the storm leaves behind flowers." Amber was my flower. Not perfect, but growing. And one day, she would bloom far from the shadows she was raised in. But just when I thought the story had reached its final paragraph, I received a phone call from a man claiming to be an attorney. He said Maureen had filed for custody of Amber again. And this time she had a powerful new ally. A wealthy man I'd never heard of. One who said he was Amber's real father. Speech balloon: what would you do if your peace was threatened again after all you survived? Red heart, like this chapter if you believe growth is real, even for the broken. Bell subscribe now, because in the next chapter, Ellen faces the final storm. And this time she brings the thunder. Don't miss the powerful conclusion. Everything is about to be revealed. The voice on the other end of the line was smooth. Smooth. "Mrs. Ellen West, my name is Jordan Prescott. I represent a Mr. Randall Forbes. He's petitioning for legal custody of Amber Wells, whom he claims is his biological daughter. My client was unaware of Amber's existence until recently and wishes to assume full responsibility for her care." I held the phone tightly, jaw clenched. "I'm not her guardian," I replied carefully. "Why are you calling me?" He paused. "Because Amber has named you in her own petition. She wishes to remain in your care if the court will allow it." I sat down slowly. Amber. That child who once burned me, lied about me, laughed at my pain. Now, she wanted me. She chose me. But this new threat, this mysterious man with wealth, lawyers, and a polished name. He came with resources I didn't have. And Maureen. She teamed up with him. Probably whispered promises of money, a second chance, public redemption. I called Margaret that night. "I've never heard of Randall Forbes," she said, clearly rattled. "Maureen never mentioned him. But if he's real, and if the court believes he's Amber's father, she could be taken away," I whispered. Margaret grew quiet. "Then we fight." The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Those days passed like smoke, thin, fast, and suffocating. Amber was terrified. "I don't want to go with him," she said one afternoon, wiping tears off her cheeks. "I don't care if he's rich. I don't know him. He just showed up like I'm some prize he lost in a pawn shop." We prepared everything. Mr. Harris filed a motion for Amber to remain with Margaret, her current legal guardian, while we contested Randall's petition. I wrote a character statement for Amber. And for the first time in months, I prayed with trembling hands. I wasn't praying for revenge this time. I was praying for a child. The court date arrived on a stormy Thursday. We stepped into the family courtroom. Felt colder than the first one. Amber sat between me and Margaret. Then he walked in. Randall Forbes. Sharp suit. Not a wrinkle out of place. He looked like he'd just stepped off a yacht. Next to him, Maureen, wearing beige with soft makeup, pretending to be a reformed mother. My stomach turned. Randall's attorney spoke first. "Your Honor, Mr. Forbes only recently discovered he had a child. He has since taken every legal step to establish paternity, which, as of this week, has been confirmed by a DNA test. Mr. Forbes owns a large estate, a stable income, and the means to provide Amber with an exceptional life." The judge turned to Randall. "Why now? Why seek custody of a child you never knew?" Randall gave a well-rehearsed smile. "Because when I saw her, I saw myself, and I wanted to do what's right. I don't want to take her away. I want to give her options." Options. He meant control. Then Maureen spoke. Her voice soft, tearful. "I've made mistakes. I let pain guide me. But I'm getting help. Amber deserves both her parents. And she deserves stability." I wanted to scream. But Mr. Harris stood up slowly. And when he did, he brought thunder. He read from court records, Amber's past trauma, the documented abuse, the video evidence. Then he showed the jury the CPS files that had stripped Maureen of custody. He reminded them that Randall was not entering this child's life as a savior, but as a stranger. Then, with a steady voice, he called Amber to the stand. She stood, knees wobbling, hands shaking. But when she spoke, the room grew still. "I didn't used to know what love was," she said. "I thought it was stuff, money, big dinners, fancy shoes." Her eyes moved toward Maureen. "But I lived in a house where I could do anything I wanted and still feel invisible." She turned to the judge. "Grandma Ellen didn't give me stuff. She gave me rules. Quiet. Tea in the morning. Forgiveness. Even when I didn't deserve it." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I don't want to live in a mansion with a man I just met. I don't want cameras and lawyers. I just want to go home. To the woman who didn't throw me away. Even when I threw fire at her." The courtroom was silent. The judge nodded slowly. He tapped his gavel. "I find no grounds to remove Amber from her current guardianship. Custody will remain with Margaret Wells. Amber will continue weekly visitation with Mrs. Ellen West, per the child's request." Petition denied. Maureen collapsed into her chair. Randall stood slowly, lips thin. Amber reached for my hand and squeezed it. That evening we returned home and ate soup by the window. Rain tapped the glass gently. Amber looked up at me. "You don't hate me." Smiled. "I don't know if I ever could." She leaned her head on my shoulder. And I knew right then this was the true ending. Not a courtroom victory. Not an inheritance reclaimed. But healing. Amber would never be the same girl again. Neither would I. We'd seen each other at our worst. And somehow chose to still be family. A month later I got another letter. This one came with a key. It was from Kevin. "Mom, I've been in rehab. I've lost everything. I don't expect forgiveness. But I sold what I had left, the truck, and I bought this apartment key for Amber. For when she's older. It's hers, not mine. Please give it to her when she's ready. Sorry. For everything." I tucked the key into my jewelry box. One day I'll give it to her. Not as a gift, but as a sign that even broken people can build again. That even storms leave seeds behind. That even fire can lead to rebirth. My name is Ellen West. I'm 79 years old. And I have scars. But I also have a granddaughter who now knows what love feels like. And that is the legacy I'll leave behind. Speech balloon. If Ellen's journey moved you, tell us what it taught you. Red heart, like this video to honor the power of quiet strength. Bell, subscribe for more real stories where truth overcomes lies. And healing begins with one brave voice. Your story matters. And just like Ellen, you're stronger than you think.